Welcome to the Vegas Law Podcast, hosted by renowned Las Vegas attorney Tony Sgro. This episode is sponsored by the law firm of Sgro and Roger. Each episode explores legal insights and local stories that matter to you. Now on with the show.
Welcome to the Vegas Law Podcast. My name is Tony Sgro. Thanks for being with us today. Today we're going to talk about a different topic. We're going to talk about women in the law. How does it feel to be a female going through law school, taking the bar, passing the bar, being a practitioner, and so on and so on. And I have had the great fortune to have 3 female law partners over the course of the last several years. And today with me, I have 2. I have Colleen Savage and I have Alanna Bondy. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Great.
All right. So I wanted to ask a couple questions in terms of as you guys came up through the legal system, whether it was school or starting your first job or as you see it today. Alanna, can you tell me, did you feel anything different? Did you feel disadvantaged? Like, how's the world today in terms of being a female practitioner as opposed to being a male practitioner? Do you see any differences?
I don't personally see any differences. I'm sure in the past there have been different experiences, but nowadays when I was in law school, I would say it was about 50-50 in terms of female versus male students. So I didn't feel any difference there. And in practice, I've felt as though, many of the judges I appear in front of are women. Many of opposing counsel I work with or colleagues that I work with are also women. So I really don't notice a difference, but I know the sentiment has been different for people from prior generations for sure.
Colleen, have you had any experiences where you felt like you had an advantage or a disadvantage because of being a female as opposed to some of your male counterparts?
I don't know that I would say there is a disadvantage relative to practicing law being a woman. I do think that there is a different experience being a young practitioner. That is definitely something that is more potent in the field and something that I have particularly experienced. And so I think we've come a long ways with women in the law and practicing, and as Alanna mentioned, appearing before female judges. And so I think we've come a long way with that shift.
Let's talk about female judges just for a second. Even in your guys' career and in that time that you have been practitioners, there's been a significant change in the bench, right? On the bench, state court in particular, in terms of the makeup, gender, male versus female. Alanna, what have you seen in the last 7, 8, 10 years while you've been practicing law? How's that landscape changed?
Yeah, definitely over the past couple election cycles, we've definitely noticed more female judges being elected, which I think is great. In the state legislature as well, we have the first majority female legislature in Nevada, and that's the first also in the U.S. So there's definitely a lot more women being elected in Nevada, both in the judiciary and in the legislature as well. Whereas prior, it was definitely more male heavy, but I think we're shifting to almost a female majority at this point.
Colleen, are there any tricks of the trade you as a practitioner use when you're speaking with a female judge as opposed to a male judge? Are you trying to connect on a different level?
No, I would say I behave exactly the same and tailor it more towards what the individual needs of the judge may be. And sometimes that's, their experience. If they have experience in a criminal background and it's a civil case, I try and tailor my presentation and oral argument to that as opposed to male versus female. And but I am always looking for a way to try and connect with the judges on a more personal level while I have the limited time in front of them. So yeah, it doesn't really differ in my opinion.
Alanna, have you ever had the experience when you're speaking with an opposing attorney, an opposing counsel, and they have been male. Have you ever had an experience where you have felt like they are trying to run over you or bully you because they perceive that they can simply because you're a female?
I have had a couple experiences in the past, especially when I was a very new practitioner, where men certainly did, older men, talk to me in a way that was very dismissive. I'm not sure, kind of like Colleen said earlier, if that was something about me being a woman or more so about me being younger. But certainly I've had a couple of experiences where men were very dismissive of me, didn't want to speak with me, asked to speak to my boss instead of me. And so I've had a couple of those experiences, unfortunately.
So how did you handle that? How did you get through it?
I mean, obviously, I've talked to you about it. I know that you stepped in one situation. But otherwise, I just press forward. I'm here to do my job. If they want to behave that way, I think it just tends to destroy their credibility and show that their position is weak. And so I tend to just ignore it, to be honest.
Colleen, do you see any evidence anymore of male lawyers trying to bully female lawyers just because they are female lawyers?
Unfortunately, yes. I think that it is still prevalent, both for, like Alanna said, female and young practitioners. A lot of times, you can say the same thing as, perhaps something you would say to opposing counsel. I might say the exact same thing, and it wouldn't be received the same way. And that's just something you have to overcome. And I think that as we get more female attorneys in the field, it's going to phase out, but it is certainly something that exists today.
So, Colleen, who is, without naming names, of course, but who is the most difficult type of opposing counsel? They're obstructive. They don't want to agree even to the simplest things. They make every part of your day difficult when you have to deal with them. What sort of person is that?
Are we talking gender?
Sure, let's start there.
I mean, I do come across a lot of older male attorneys who have a particular way of practicing that may not, something I'm proposing may not be something they like, that, their responses are more obstructive, like you mentioned. However, there's also some older female attorneys who behave the same way. So it really just depends. But in my experience, a lot of them, unfortunately, are of the older male generation.
Which I am proud to be a member of. So, Alanna, have you had older female attorneys that you've encountered where you felt like maybe they're carrying around a little bit of resentment because they had a little bit more difficult time just because of how old they are in terms of making their way and making themselves known and their presence known? Do you feel any of that?
Maybe sometimes. I think I experience it both ways. So I've definitely encountered older female attorneys who have a bit of a chip on their shoulder or seem like they've been, slighted in some way through law practice. And so they feel like they need to treat the younger generation that same way. But I've also had a lot of older female attorneys be very defensive of younger female attorneys, especially judges who make sure, your whole argument is heard. They take a lot of time to ensure that what you have to say is properly listened to. And so I think I see both protectiveness on one end, but I also see some resentfulness from some others.
So tell me, Alanna, what are some of the things you've been able to accomplish? So you're not quite at 10 years yet you've been involved in a number of high-profile cases, a number of high-dollar value cases. Tell me a couple of things you're proud of in terms of accomplishments from a legal perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely worked on a lot of big cases in this office. We did a couple of the largest school district settlements in Clark County history related to child sexual abuse allegations. So I'm really proud of that. We obviously represent the Police Protective Association and its members in relation to wage and hour disputes and general union matters, which I am also really proud of, and we have really great outcomes there as well. So I think we've done a lot of great things in this office.
Have you had a chance to go to a jury trial, participate in a jury trial?
Yes, I did do one murder trial with you, which was a really great learning experience for sure. Unfortunately, we didn't get the the verdict we wanted, but I think we did a great job, and I'm really proud of that as well.
Good. Did you feel anything from the jury when a male spoke to them, such as myself or the district attorney's office, if you recall, they were male attorneys, versus when you were communicating with the jury? Did you feel any difference there?
No, I can't say that I did. I mean, the jury's made up of, different members of the community. And so I think each person has their own interaction and reaction to different types of people. So I didn't feel as though, the jury as a whole was treating me differently than anybody else, but I'm sure each individual kind of has their own perspective of things. And so I'm sure as each of us was going up, they had a different reaction to each of us.
So, Colleen, tell me about some of the things that you're proud of in terms of accomplishments, just from a legal perspective. What are some of the things you can point to that would be reflective of things you've been able to accomplish, things that allowed you to grow, that sort of thing?
One thing that I am proud of as an accomplishment thus far is being on a case that has resulted in a high value settlement for a client, where, we're the fifth or sixth, even seventh attorneys hired on the case. And we've had a few of those to where, these individuals may have previously been told there was no hope for them. And then they have the opportunity to come before us, and we are thankfully have the opportunity to represent them and take the case to a resolution to where they're satisfied. So I think I'm very happy to be a part of those cases. I also had the opportunity to participate in a number of trials with you, which not many people can say this early on in their legal career. And also, obviously, coming to a point of making partner in a law firm.
When you speak of the cases where some of your colleagues have passed on the case, right? When you say fifth or sixth lawyer, sometimes that's interpreted as a red flag, right? A client fires 5 or 6 lawyers, then they end up here. Then you got to raise an eyebrow and wonder whether we should take the case at all. I think what you're talking about is someone going and enlisting the assistance of an attorney and being turned down time and time again. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so what is it that caused you to take a chance on someone that had been turned down so many times before by some of your colleagues here in Las Vegas?
Just having an idea, something outside of, the normal legal world that other people may not feel comfortable pursuing. A lot of times the law reads a specific way, and when reading within the boundaries of that law, it may not appear as if an individual has a case or can be successful in an outcome of a case. But, in doing those cases, we have taken leaps of faith and stretched the boundaries, and ultimately we're able to overcome just the plain language of the law and have an outcome that other attorneys didn't think that they could have.
Alanna, when you're a partner here at Sgro and Roger, right? When it came down to decision time, what are some of the factors that you looked at in terms of yourself as a female attorney, where your career path was going to go? What were some of the things that you considered as to whether or not to be a partner in any firm, this one or any other?
I think obviously the culture is the most important. I've been here for several years. I'm very close with everybody here. So that's very important to me. I really like that we do have a lot of female attorneys, and we have a really good balance that way. And a lot of different, races, genders. And so I think it's good to have diversity for sure. That was important to me. And then, we have a lot of diversity in the types of cases we take. And I think that's important as well. I like to get creative with cases. I like to be intellectually stimulated. And so that was definitely an important factor as well.
And Colleen, same question for you. What would you consider to be the most important factors in determining which law firm to be invested in and become a partner in? What was important to you?
Yes, the same factors that Alanna considered were obviously very important to me, including, who you're going to be partners with. I think that's a huge consideration, and who you want to essentially continue to be a role model for you, and how you're going to practice, and how the trials and, how the firm is going to lead cases, and the steps that you can take to better improve the firm and the ability to do so. Those are all things that I looked for.
Alanna, what was the most interesting case you've worked on?
I don't know that I have a specifically most interesting case I've worked on. The cases that I like working on the most are cases where there's not a lot of case law. Maybe it's a statute that hasn't been interpreted or a rule that hasn't been interpreted. I love, getting in there and getting creative. And so we do take on a lot of cases that are kind of the first of its kind. And those are my favorite things to work on, because we can set precedent, but also it gives you more room to make creative arguments.
And in fact, you were a lobbyist at one point, and you continue to work on bills here and there. Isn't that right?
Yes, I was an intern lobbyist for the ACLU in my second year of law school. That was a lot of fun. I learned a lot at the legislature, and it teaches you a lot about how statutes are drafted, how to read statutes. So I think that's super important, and I think it's a skill for any litigator to have, for sure. And to this day, I still do assist with some drafting for some of our clients that have some bills.
Colleen, what's the single most important thing that you do that makes you a better practitioner? So if I was in law school, so let's pretend this is like 5 years ago. If I was in law school and I came to you for advice and I asked you, what's the best advice you can give me to make me a better lawyer? What would you tell me?
Law clerks do come and ask those questions to all of the attorneys in the office. And the advice that I have given and will continue to give is always be prepared. And no matter what that means, staying up and reading the cases, going through all the briefing, no matter what, if you are prepared, you can maneuver your legal argument before a judge and outmaneuver the other side.
So let's talk about law clerks. Do you participate in a relationship between this law firm and our law school here in Las Vegas?
Yes, and that's something that I'm very happy to be a part of here, and I'm glad that, the firm works with aspiring attorneys and giving them the opportunity to see how this firm in particular practices law. And
Colleen, what do you think would be at the top of the most frequently asked questions in terms of the law clerks that work with us while they're finishing up their law school degree at UNLV?
The questions we get are anything from, is that a typical deposition? Do hearings always happen that way? More practical questions to, what is it that I need to do to excel as an individual attorney in a firm? So the range of questions really varies.
And Alanna, in addition to working with law clerks from UNLV, you've also developed some community outreach with interns that are interested in a career in the legal field. And there's lots of careers in the legal field beyond just being a lawyer, right? You have paralegals and legal secretaries and legal assistants, and the list goes on and on. Tell me about some of the community outreach you've done and some of the internship programs that you've participated in.
Yeah, we have a relationship with the Northwest Career College. They have a program for legal assistants and paralegals, I believe. And part of their training is a practical training where they go to a law office and they extern for a period as part of their program. And so we have invited many legal externs as well as paralegals to come and work with us to finish off their diploma, and they've been a great asset. We've hired on many of them after they've finished school to stay on with the firm. And it's great to get to know somebody while they're in school, kind of see what they can do and start that training early. So I think it's a great thing to do.
And when someone's interning and trying to separate themselves or set themselves apart to be the sort of person that a firm like ours would hire when they were done with their internship? What are you looking for? What skill set are you looking for?
I'm looking for somebody who is ambitious, who asks a lot of questions, who expresses an interest in being here, somebody who, isn't just here to get their extra hours in and leaves. They try to make themselves a part of the office. So just really expressing interest in the firm and expressing interest in learning is the most important, I think.
And what about from the law clerk side? Which law clerk candidate is going to be the most attractive to you in terms of extending a job offer to move from law clerk to being a lawyer? What are you looking for?
I really look for someone who is a self-starter and someone who takes it upon themselves to try and take the next step without being directed to do so, or if there is a problem that is presented, taking those steps to solve the problem before immediately coming to someone and asking how to solve the problem. Those are great qualities to have.
And in terms of being in the community, when you receive referrals, which all of us do, from acquaintances to friends to family, what is the thing that you would say, Alanna? Why would anyone that you know, why should they refer you a client? What is it that you offer skill set wise that perhaps some of your colleagues cannot or do not?
Well, I don't want to put anyone down, but I do think I am very ambitious. I can be very creative with certain claims. I put a lot of time and effort into researching, whereas others may not. Some people kind of like to go with, what they've done before, which I think is always a mistake. And in terms of referring to the firm, I think we are still a smaller but mid-sized boutique firm. I think we pay a lot of attention to client communication, ensuring that clients are getting constant updates, and I think that's really important too.
So, Colleen, you've had the opportunity to represent attorneys in front of the Nevada State Bar, which is our disciplinary or governing body. So lawyers sometimes can get in trouble as well. What do you see as the number one thing that gets lawyers in trouble, and what do you do at Sgro and Roger to make sure it doesn't happen to any of the lawyers that work here for us?
Definitely one of the main areas that I've seen attorneys get in trouble ethically is the lack of communication with the clients. And here we set up so many different layers of client communication. There's an opportunity to speak with paralegals, more than one attorney on a case, so that we're ensuring that client is always up to date. They're receiving not only communications via telephone call, we have the ability to text clients and email clients. And a lot of times those communications are done in addition to one another, right? So there's multiple levels of correspondence and communication that's going on to ensure that, one, not only is the client informed, but two, we are meeting our ethical obligations as well.
And unfortunately, sometimes those telephone calls can't always occur between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. That be fair?
That's fair.
And do you make it a point to make sure your clients are kept up to date and up to speed on everything that's going on?
Yes, of course. And, if it's the case that it falls outside of those hours, that's something that I'm willing to do. I know our firm is as well. And sometimes, just practically speaking, we have clients who are, busy during those time periods and aren't able to discuss the facts of their case or have questions answered during the normal 9 to 5 hours where it's anticipated that you speak with them outside of those normal business hours.
How does it feel, Alanna, now that you have transitioned from being an active practitioner without any administrative responsibilities, right? Up until a couple of years ago when you became a partner, you didn't really concern yourself with how much we owed to the copy machine company or, whether or not we needed another computer, who needed a raise, those sorts of things. How do you feel now that you've transitioned more into that leadership role where administrative responsibilities are now something that you have to consider?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different skill set, and it does take a lot of time. Unfortunately, it can take away from actually litigating at times, but that's why it's important to have a good team that you can delegate things to. I do enjoy that aspect of it, but, it's definitely a different skill set running a business versus, litigating a case. And I think it's just, important to dedicate time to both, but make sure that if you're not able to pay attention to one or the other, that you're delegating certain tasks.
So you enjoy the administrative part as well?
I do, yeah.
And Colleen, how's that transition worked out for you?
I also enjoy the administrative side of things because I think it allows you the opportunity to communicate with people on a level maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable with communicating with you, not because you're intimidating, because you aren't. Because, people might feel more comfortable coming to someone that they engage with more on a day-to-day basis, and you're able to see things that they have input on and have the ability to make that change in the firm. But yes, oftentimes it is the case where I do administrative tasks and don't start my normal attorney job until well after 5 p.m. for the day.
And I prefer to think of myself as just being direct. I think that's probably the best adjective.
Yes.
And I'm sure my dear friend Darrell would agree, who can't speak right now, but I'm sure he would agree. Colleen, have you ever caused yourself to reassess a particular strategy that you were engaged in a case and had to find yourself recalibrating that whole strategy in a case? And what do you do in that circumstance when what you tried the first time isn't working? The judge isn't buying it. You don't feel like the jury's buying it. You have to change gears. How do you do that?
Yes, I have found myself in that position. And I think one of the things that I utilize here is the opportunity to engage with attorneys who don't necessarily practice that type of law every day or may not be super familiar with it. And so presenting the information to them and running strategy by them and getting their thoughts and opinions, and not only attorneys who practice in different fields, but also paralegals and legal assistants who practice in different areas of law. And we've, called team meetings to strategize and go through different fact patterns to get everyone's opinion. And I think that's a very helpful way of handling those situations.
Alanna, what do you see as the biggest benefit from being able to collaborate with a group of attorneys as opposed to being in a smaller office or being a sole practitioner? What do you find to be the benefits of having different brains to go pick and different eyeballs to look at the same thing?
Yeah, it's definitely, everybody looks at a set of facts differently. We have a lot of different people from different walks of life in our office. And so it's always really interesting to see how different people interpret the same set of facts. And it's really good to bounce ideas off of a group and then get an understanding of, what goes over well with somebody, what goes over well generally with a group, what may not go over so well with certain types of people. And so that's super helpful. And we definitely use that a lot in the office.
You mentioned earlier that this particular office was diverse, right? We have males, females, different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. What benefit does that have to someone like you who's trying to run an argument past a group at the same time?
Well, it's kind of like having, like a mock jury in front of you, right? It's a cross-section of our community all here in the office. And so I get to have an idea of how a jury may react and how different members of a jury may react to certain arguments. And so I always find that super helpful.
Colleen, I want you to imagine you're sitting around Sunday dinner, you're at your mom's house, and one of your family members asks you, what's the proudest thing that you could reflect back on in terms of this career path? What makes you happy that you chose being a lawyer? You work long hours, sometimes for persons that are less than thankful. And it's one of those things where sometimes when you get the result, it was like, yeah, well, of course you got that result. I was right. And then if you don't get the desired result, then they're asking, what did I spend all that money for? What did I need you for? So there's got to be something in there that makes you know that you chose the right career path. So what if you're asked Sunday dinner, you're at your mom's, someone says, basically, what do you do? Why do you do what you do? What are you proud of?
I am in the unique situation where I am almost 15 years older than my only sibling. I have a sister who is in college right now. And one thing that makes me very proud of what I do is that I've been able to make an impact on her, because she has, seen me go through college and law school and ultimately take the bar and become a practicing attorney, and has decided that she now also would like to become a practicing attorney. So seeing that impact is really nice.
Alanna, if you had to point to one time, one case, one day where you thought to yourself, you know what, I deserve to be here. I'm a lawyer. I just did something that many others could not do. And I belong in this game. I belong in this industry. What would that be?
I think I've had a lot of those moments. I think the thing that comes to mind right now is anytime I've argued for a summary judgment motion and actually won and won the entire argument before even having to go to trial. That always feels really good. And getting some of the settlements we've achieved, I think, is also reaffirming that I'm good at what I do, for sure.
And when you say getting a settlement, that means that the other side has essentially agreed that they don't want to mess with you, for lack of a better term, and try the case in front of a jury. Yeah, essentially. I mean, they've agreed that there's been, some liability on their part, some wrongdoing on their part, and, they don't want to take it to trial and risk an even bigger verdict or award. In terms of managing styles, Colleen, how would you describe how you manage the folks that work here with us at the firm?
Well, I like to think that I use my background before I was an attorney to help with my management style. I didn't always practice law, and throughout college worked in the hospitality industry. And I think that really allowed me to develop my communication skills in dealing with not only coworkers and other employees, but also, customers. And so one thing I try and do is be able to be approachable. And I want people to feel comfortable coming to me. And if there's a problem that they're facing, let's solve this together, as opposed to someone who may have fear in coming to a manager or a boss.
And Alanna, you also had a career path prior to going to law school. Has that prior career path helped you in terms of being an effective lawyer?
Yeah, I think so. I used to work in the hospitality industry. Specifically, we were in a company that did restaurant and bar development, and I was a manager in that company. So even in that role, I would review a lot of contracts, help with a lot of deals. And so that's definitely helped with my negotiating as an attorney, reviewing contracts, reviewing the terms of contracts. So that actually is what inspired me to go to law school. So it definitely helps.
Thank you so much, ladies, for being here. And I just want to say, too, sometimes much is made about a specific individual's abilities and skill sets, etc. And I am a shining example of those that have been fortunate enough to surround themselves with extremely capable people. And not to minimize, even our partner in Reno is female. Our primary point of contact in Milan is female. And every one of them I would put up against anybody. And the synergy that exists at the firm because of the skill set of the individual partners is what makes this all work. So thank you very much for being here. I'm proud to have you part of this firm. And you can reach us at sgroandroger.com, and you can phone us at 702-384-9800. Thanks for listening to Vegas Law Podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us, and for further information, please visit our website at sgroandroger.com. Please like and subscribe.